So good afternoon, everyone. This is Audrey Russo, President and CEO of the Pittsburgh Technology Council, and thrilled to have this conversation today with James Julius, President and CEO of VISIMO. And I'll introduce him more formally in a moment. But I just want to make sure that everyone knows that we put your microphones on mute and we have a chat so you can ask James questions. Jonathan Kirsting, who is Vice President of marketing and media for the Tech Council, spends a lot of his time doing storytelling. He's going to monitor the chat. And I want to thank Huntington Bank for their belief in us and partnership with us for almost a year in doing this series, which is hard to believe that we're coming up soon into March, but we have a packed schedule coming up as well. So make sure that you're signed up. A lot of interesting people that we're going to be talking to over the next 3 weeks. So 40 by 80 is the wholly owned subsidiary of the Tech Council, and we focus on entrepreneurship and actually pathways for skill development, workforce development. You're going to hear some more stuff about that coming out of the Tech Council soon. So I'm bringing up James Julius, and I'm bringing him up, and we're going to talk about his company, VISIMO. And I want to welcome James. Thank you so much for taking the time. I know you've been very busy, but it's important for us to know all the people who are working on incredible things in our region, and you fit that bill. So really appreciate you joining us. So before we get started, I'd like to know, like, who is James? How is James? It's been COVID now for almost a year, and your company's been doing some really timely work. So how about if we start from that? Who is James? Are you originally from Pittsburgh? Where'd you go to school? Anything, family?
Yeah, happy to. So born and raised here in Pittsburgh. I live with my wife and we have 4 kids. We live west of the city in Robinson. As I mentioned to you at the top of this before everybody joined, 4 between 2 and 10. So it's a kind of wild and crazy time for us in our life right now, but wouldn't change it for anything. Went to school started at Pitt, finished my undergraduate degree at Robert Morris, focused in the computer information systems side of the house, had a master's degree while I was there, got married shortly after school, ended up going into spending time in the consumer goods space and then the healthcare space with some of the larger companies that are here in Pittsburgh, and ended up getting my MBA along the way from Carnegie Mellon as well. So it was real fun. I spent my entire career here, had the opportunity to move, but we have an extended family here, so we decided to call and make Pittsburgh our long-term home.
So when did you start the company?
I started the company in fall of 2015. I had spent 3 years at Highmark previously, worked in a lot of different roles there in the finance and analytics space. And after my time there, took a moment to figure out really what was next for me in my career and made the decision to start VISIMO. And the goal of the company at that point was really to focus on small businesses. I had the chance to see analytics in like really, really big businesses and, kind of like the misuse and the spend and all these things, like for companies that have great resources that don't always use them well, what happens if you could bring them to a place that could use them better? So there was a consultative bent to how we got started, and it's really evolved a lot since then over the past 5 years.
So let me get this straight. You were a parent of at least 2 kids, right? If not 3 kids when you started. You quit your job and you said you're going to become an entrepreneur.
Yeah, so my daughter was just born in August, so I was my third born, and you can ask my wife. I have a tendency to try to pile on. Maybe that's just the young and brash, type A side of my personality. But we started the business in October. I left Highmark in September of 15. Incorporated the business. Well, we actually started the business in October, and we incorporated at the beginning of 2016. And so a lot's happened in that period of time.
So how does it feel being an entrepreneur compared to your work before? Because you worked at good places before, and you certainly have a great academic background.
Yeah, I mean, coming from Philips Respironics and then Telmani and then Highmark, working with embedded in really great organizations. The entrepreneurship side of things is a totally different ballgame. partially because there's things like, and I know this is a question I think you want to get to a little bit later, but I'll bring it forward if you don't mind. But we bootstrapped the company. So this was taking money out of my 401k, which wasn't about, huge, right? Just basically took some money forward and said, okay, we're going to live on this and we're going to fund the business and get it started. And there's a lot of things they don't teach you about how to start a business, despite having an MBA in finance and analytics. And I was trading foreign currency for a long time at Del Monte. And I had all like really great, institutional and industry experience, but they don't teach you how to file a PA 100 with the state, and what are the things that you need to know for payroll, and how do you incorporate a business. Like, they don't teach you these things, and there's not always great resources of how to do it. And so getting the business started, and then we had a couple of different models that we tried to go with, having a lot of subcontractors, and I had an equity partner at one point that didn't work out. Like, there's just, I'd say I probably have more things that we've done wrong in the past 5 years, more things that we've learned from, not things that have caused us to go out of business or even have really challenged us in a way, but it challenged us as a means to allow us to think differently. And, really the key decisions, what I've seen allow us to be successful is realizing that I need to bring in really smart people along the way to help advise, to help guide, and to help lead the company alongside. And I've been really blessed to have, great people, be in my company with me.
So how many people are working with you now?
Last I checked, we're right around the 14, 15 mark, and we have 3 interns coming this summer and 2 student new hires coming that just graduated will be joining us in May. And so rapidly growing, which is also kind of cool. And like, it's in the pandemic, like totally terrifying, because it's one thing me worrying about, my own family and financial well-being, which I've kind of gotten used to over the past 5 years. But that's I think that's an ongoing fear that any entrepreneur has, and it's kind of really hard to explain to somebody that hasn't been in that situation. But really caring for the livelihood of now over a dozen people and what it means to them, and going through this is a whole different thing that I'm really fortunate, really glad that we've been able to navigate it quite well.
So you were excited. We actually recognized you last year for in Tech 50.
Yep.
And so let's go back to the earliest days of you founding the company.
Yeah.
What was the problem that you wanted to solve?
Yeah, so one of the biggest things I thought that businesses lacked was good information when it came time to make a decision. So even a step before that, when the company name is VISIMO, but it's not, despite it being all caps, it's not an acronym. It actually is concatenated 2 words, really, it means visualize more. So what can companies do if they could see more, if they could understand more is happening in their company? Could they make better business decisions, right? So that was the initial thinking. The logo, we have a lighthouse, it's part of the logo. We want that to be something that helps show direction and also give warning, for people. So that was like the initial founding. And so we were really heavy into visual analytics. That was something that was really starting to become popular in 2015, 2016. Jonathan mentions VISIMO. Yes, both Carnegie Mellon products. That led to some really like brand confusion in the beginning of this, because it was awesome because it opened some doors for us. Like, oh, you're that Carnegie Mellon company. I'm like, yeah, I am. They're like, how's the IBM thing going? I was like, no, that's not us. So that was kind of fun back for a little bit. Enough time has gone by that confusion has kind of since gone. But when we were really heavy in the visual analytics, what can we do to take a lot of different data and information and then present it in a way that business leaders can make decisions? We basically said, business owners, you develop this sense of gut, this intuition. Now, how can you come up with data and analysis tools that help align to that gut, but also help avoid misinformation, help give you the right information you need to run your business? We use terms like demystifying, right? How can we take this black boxy kind of reporting and analysis and then present it in a way that's nice and easy? But we've evolved into so much more than that, and really through the help of the key leaders and developers that we've hired over the past 5 years.
Well, so now let's talk about an issue that I think you've had an opportunity to work on, and many of us can relate to, and that's the vaccine hesitancy.
Yep.
And it's a relationship to disinformation campaigns, which is run on social media, et cetera.
Sure.
And thankfully, there's a group of people, I believe, at Pitt, right, that have
Yep.
been pretty, passionate about trying to figure this out. And you are sort of part of that project. You're helping Pitt. So what can you talk about in terms of that project? And it's really particularly important now that I think the United States is like at 9 to 10% of people having at least one vaccine.
Yeah, so one of the biggest challenges you have with social media in general could be the possible spread of misinformation. And the goal of this project was to understand how misinformation can affect different communities, such as minority populations. So, we're working in partnership with Pitt under a grant through a local foundation here to help provide these researchers with information that they can use to better understand and analyze the information that's associated with COVID-19. So there's basically types of social network analysis, kids can almost think of like spider webs. One person says something and they've retweeted it from somebody else, and they understand that this person's a person of influence and so on and so forth. So they be able to understand how the networks of this information can actually be used to influence other people, and where do these sources of misinformation come from. So we can pull in lots of variants around vaccine and COVID. And while a lot of people don't share geographic indicators, there's things that we can do to get context clues. So it allows us to kind of slice and dice information and provide researchers with, really sound insights about what things they can do to understand the sources and then how to combat that type of misinformation.
So are there any findings yet that you can talk about?
Yeah, not yet, and still early stage. And a lot of the information that we have is confidential. But the key thing is that we're one of the few organizations who are capable of getting in and doing this type of analysis through large social media organizations, like what we're doing in very, very focused with COVID with University of Pittsburgh. We've done in other projects with the University of Pittsburgh, or similar projects with USC out in California. And so we are working with these academic partners to be able to help provide them information that they might not otherwise be able to get their hands on.
And why can't they get their hands on that information?
Some of it's just really understanding the expertise of how to access certain APIs, whether it be through Twitter or Reddit or others. And so us being a data analysis company, and we know how to get this data and extract it and then provide it in a way that they can actually do the proper research on.
Okay. So you really are an important arm in terms of this space. One wouldn't think that this would be a problem, but now this is a great opportunity. There's other areas, in terms of sentiment and misinformation, that I would imagine that people would be interested in. Are there any things that you're seeing?
As far as other areas that people could be interested in?
Right.
Yeah, this is where it starts to be challenging for us to be able to tell you for certain, because we work both in the private and the public sector spaces. And one of the things with public sector is a lot of these funding opportunities and these thoughts they take a long time to bring to market. We're working in partnership and putting proposals together that are still identifying how to work and combat not just COVID-19, but how does, what is the next pandemic? What is the next thing that's going to come out? So what are the things we can learn from what we're going through now and apply it to what the next big thing is? And it doesn't even have to be in the United States. It could be in other parts of the developed or undeveloped world. And so that's where, on the private sector side of things, or in the academic or research partner side of things, the needs are a little bit more specific. And so we try to partner through and with them to be able to help them understand what their needs are. And that aligns to our broader public sector strategy. We'll talk about in a minute about the kind of awards that we've gotten through the Air Force.
Right.
It's under a specific project with the acronym is STTR. It's essentially a small business collaborative research project where we are working in collaboration with academic institutions to solve a specific problem. and are working with and developing these partnerships with other academic institutions not only has helped us build relationships and embed us within those teams, but understand what other types of problems could we potentially be solving with them in the future.
Well, so you landed, let's go into this. You landed a couple of high profile assignments, right?
Yep.
There with the Army and the Air Force.
Yep.
So can you talk at all about those projects?
A little bit, yeah. So what's nice about these projects is they represent the two sides of the business that what we've established. As I mentioned, we got going really as a visual analytics company, but we've developed not only into doing visual analytics, but we're doing that more of like as an add-on at this point. We've developed into a software development, a cloud development company, as well as a data science company. And so there's two pieces of the business that we're bringing forward. And these projects are a good representation of what we're doing there. So like take, for example, the Army. We're working in collaboration with the Army's Artificial Intelligence Task Force and the Software Engineering Institute through CMU to be able to develop what's called the Project COEASE. And what COEASE essentially is the first centralized data science platform for the Army. And what the goal is creating a platform that is scalable, it's agile, it's modular, it's portable, but most importantly, it's open. They're not tying themselves into specific vendors. It allows them to be able to grow. And some problems like in the data science space, for anybody that's folks that are typical and are understanding like how to do analysis, you run into different limitations, whether it be hardware limitations or you get access and security limitations, or what happens if the tools and packages from one person are not consistent with another. You might not be able to load, you might not even get the same results. And so we abstract all that away. We make it very, very simple for a user to be able to log in, access tools, and be able to help the military drive some of their operational initiatives, because AI is just such a huge focus of the AITF, the Army Futures Command, and more broadly of the current administration. Like AI is a huge focus area. So the success of COEASE is going to be hugely important to the Department of Defense here over the next few years. On the Air Force side of things, those STTR projects that I mentioned with you, one is under an umbrella called Agility Prime. And so Agility Prime essentially is we're developing these algorithms to help unmanned aerial vehicles or orbs to be able to have sense and avoid technology. It allows them to work within humanitarian aid missions for effective transportation of goods, help with traffic congestion, different technology readiness. And so that's like really cool data science sort of stuff that we get to deploy. And on the other hand, we're working to develop synthetic imaging through another project that allows essentially for these different projects to have better technology to understand landscape, understand terrain, and really deploying some of these high-end artificial intelligence and machine learning algorithms in the field. So the goal that what we have is bringing these forward and then actually finding the ability to deploy them within the military. So it's a really cool opportunity for us to partner with academic partners, but also bring some of these technologies to life.
You can see John Ingram wrote something. He would like something in layman's terms that you could share the issues many overlook when they're beginning a data project. One thing is to use data, but how do you make it actionable? Yeah,
that's always challenging, right? I'd say here's the way that we have approached it. I can't say that's the solely the only way. First off, more generally, people want to jump right to the solution, right? You probably have seen this in your own businesses, maybe not so much with data, whatever you're experts in as a company, and you kind of want to jump right to the solution without a thorough understanding of the problem. So our process has always been consultative in nature, taking a step back. What is the goals that you're trying to solve for? And some businesses they really love that part of the process. It helps refine the purpose of it. And it's really important for data projects in general, because in order for the data to be actionable, you need to know how is it actually going to answer the question that you have at the end of the day. And is the question that you're attempting to answer, is that the one that you're really focused on in the project? Because sometimes you uncover through questions that you're actually trying to solve something totally different than you think you sought out to start with. So that's kind of not a great way to start off the explanation, but it's a way to say you consultatively have to understand what are you trying to solve for. In order to make the data actionable, we look to get it down to the most granular level of information. Essentially, what can you do to categorize it? How many different ways can you ask a single question of the data? Because the more that you get into the analysis, you'll find out that what types of questions you want to ask are going to evolve. Organizations start to get data and information and they get really, really excited. And then they get frustrated again because they find out that they have to go back and get more information that they didn't have at the start of it. So that what we always try to do is thoroughly understand where the different types of branches, what could you possibly ask, and then make sure those types of categories are represented in the data set itself.
And so it's so interesting because I came out of BI, business intelligence, right? Which is pre-AI.
Mm-hmm.
And many people have these legacy systems that are in there that just do this, what I would say, internal web crawling.
Yep.
What you're talking about is actually throwing that all up in the air and saying, no, we're going to look at what you're trying to solve and look at every point of where you have a repository.
Yeah, it depends on the needs of the organization, right? When we're working within a software development side of things, we like to make sure we're partnering with the business to understand, like even developing a software product. For example, we've developed a software product that helps the construction safety industry, and that where it initially started of helping keep people safe, because up until recently this area was like huge in the natural gas production space. So working with those companies, it means to say, if you are more safe, do you know what that means as far as dollars, lost time, actually bringing new people in? What about insurance costs? And we provided and created a tool that helped people understand that better. Well, that tool now is being used in local universities so that they can understand case studies, so that the people, before they even leave the school, are getting immersed in how to become, better and safer employees on a job site. These are things that you have to give yourselves the freedom to know where you're ultimately going to go. And, traditional BI is more of descriptive. It's going to answer a question, but it's very hard to be able to know where that question is going to go. By us working and developing cloud and web-based tools for companies and doing this all through an open source development, it allows us to essentially scale with the needs of the organization. And then the skill we have internally, we're not just data jockeys, we're not just coders, right? We bring both of these people together in the organization to help develop a really cohesive tool for whomever our client is.
So what do you think, if you were to imagine the year ahead? I mean, who would have ever imagined the year we just had? But let's imagine the year ahead. Where do you think that there's some areas that are going to proliferate?
Yeah, I think that things like in the space where we are right now, this artificial intelligence, machine learning, like these are topics that are like really, really interesting, top of mind, partially because everybody hears them. They're a little bit buzzwordy right now, and they're buzzwordy and people don't always understand what they mean, right? And what we expect to see is a lot of businesses saying, ooh, I like that. It's something I don't have, and I feel like I should be doing it. I encourage any business that wants to be able to think if they can be able to use this better, because it leads anything to how to automate, normal tasks. We came alongside a Fortune 100 business, and they were spending $200,000 a year just for somebody to move information around on Excel sheets, right? Whenever you start to realize that it's a relatively low bar that a lot of businesses have to jump over. And then we start to be able to connect what are some of these big tools that they can be able to see where things are going. The great thing is that technology is very accessible, it's inexpensive, and there's organizations who are primed to be able to provide these types of actionable tools back to organizations. That's one of the biggest things I see coming in the future. Also, this lack of need to tying yourself to a specific large vendor for all of your needs. I don't want to call out any single vendor that may or may not be represented in this call, but finding yourself being able to essentially pull yourself out of vendor lock-in type of situations. It may be more expensive in the immediacy, like in the first year cost, but by year in 2, 3, 5, 10-year ROIs and by far exceed the vendor lock-in type of costs.
So here you are 5 years in, almost 6 years in, is that right?
That's right.
What you have about 15 people you are hiring. What kind of people are on your, what kind of people do you have on your team?
Yeah, so we have, most of our folks are technical in nature. These are people who are front end or back end or cloud developers. And there's so many different job descriptions that exist in this space. But essentially, these are really, really intelligent, I would say brilliant computer software and developers. These are folks generally with computer science degrees. They have some type of experience in working in different web and different coding technologies, typically Python. That's the one that we're very heavy in as an organization. Folks that are self-starters, folks that are capable of working in this type of remote environment of where we, currently live as a company. And in particular, we're hiring in the software quality assurance space. So we're ramping up our testing and QA capabilities for both our internal R&D projects as well as our client projects. And there's some different support roles that we'll be hiring for here over the next 3 to 6 months as well.
And so just back to the Army AI Task Force, is that still intact?
It is, yeah, and it's been expanding their presence here in the Pittsburgh area.
And then are you involved with any of the autonomous and land-based vehicles in addition to UAVs?
So through the different partnerships and different projects that we have, there's different organizations that we'll partner with. I know we've had conversations with a couple of Pittsburgh-based organizations, both in the robotics side of things and a couple of others as well, that really align to our overall proposal strategy. So what we've seen, and this is one of the things that helped us really thrive in the pandemic, is in fall of 2019, we saw that one of the biggest challenges that we have in our space is education. And if in order to educate people, sometimes we have to be able to understand what are the alternative markets that we can be able to diversify ourselves in. So we've really started playing more in this where we're seeing all this success in the public sector space. It's on the back of us making this decision in late 2019 to really move forward. While we've seen some growth in the private sector, most of it's been in the public sector space. So in the public sector, as I mentioned to you, some of this is in order to be successful, because we are still a small business, there's not a lot of employees. And in order to help legitimize a lot of the work that we've done, it's through partnership, through whether it be large industry partners or through academic partners. And that's where we really see our growth in the long run, not only through doing these types of responses in the SBIR, STTR, working through these type of small business research set-asides, but also working in the private sector that we've developed relationships through. Everything is relationship driven. And working in our public sector space has allowed us to really ramp up the relationships that we've developed with these companies.
And so anything next on the horizon for you that you want to share? Anything that you're feeling? You've been in Pittsburgh for a while. Anything that you're feeling or thinking about in terms of working remotely? I mean, you're working remotely. Everyone's working remotely except you.
Yeah, I'm in the office. Small house and 4 kids. It's not a conducive, work from home environment. But I can remember, distinctly before any federal, state, local agencies gave the shutdown order. We had prepared months in advance to go through the shutdown. We went through communication platform adjustments, made sure we went through active testing, because we knew that something was going to happen. By us, loving data, we were tracking a lot of this very intensively leading up to it, and so we were ready to go remote whenever that happened. Matter of fact, we went remote, March 14th without a hitch, right? And so we ended up getting a little bit of a larger space to allow us to accommodate the social distancing. We did all the things from giving PPE and keeping the desks moved apart to you have the different air filtration and things that all the successful businesses that have been able to attest to say they've done successfully. We were able to open for a short period last year and able to do it safely. But again, us tracking the data and the way that we do, we voluntarily shut down again in late Q3 of last year. And so we've been working apart, largely since the beginning of November. And we find it's really important to focus on employee engagement and what are things that we can do to promote creativity, such as doing lunch and learns or doing something one of my vice presidents brought to our organization that he called TGIT, or Thank God It's Tuesday events, right? It's a way for us to, disengage from the normal work that we're doing to promote just, getting together and engaging with each other. That's the biggest thing is, on the best day of remote work, it's not going to be as good as what it would be like actually being in person. But we're certainly efforting as hard as we can to give everything that we can to our employees while we're in this time off. I mean, I'm very thankful that, our employees' payroll wasn't affected, their benefits weren't affected, the amount of work that they were getting wasn't affected. We managed to keep, not only managed to keep everybody busy, but we nearly doubled the size of the organization on a headcount perspective in the middle of this pandemic, and we're poised to grow another 5 to 10 people before the end of the year. So it's really fortunate.
All right. Well, I want to thank you for joining us. We had James Julius. We'll be staying connected to you. I think we put your website out there, VISIMO, and really appreciate the work that you're doing in staying in Pittsburgh and building this company. And tomorrow we have Teresa Huber. She's the CEO of Intervala. And we're going to have fun talking to her. She's in advanced manufacturing and running a powerhouse of a company here in Westmoreland County. So I want to thank everyone again. Thank you, James. Thank you, everyone, for being here. We'll see you here tomorrow, same time.